Fuck daylight savings time. Welcome into the worst fantasy show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. We are back for NFL Sunday Week 9, and we are answering questions once again from the chat and from the Fantasy Football Advice Network. If you guys are not familiar, it's run by my boy Tyler. So it's basically a social media without all the bullshit for fantasy football. So if you guys want to go check it out, you can sign up for free, make a profile, tinker about, and check it out. So again, fantasy football advice, fantasy football sports.network. But yeah, we'll get into some questions. I'm already arguing on Twitter about my beef with injury designations in the NFL. And so everyone's kind of with me on one aspect of it. And I feel like I'm pushing the line. So my whole thing is these lion-ass NFL teams and head coaches with their silly abuse of the injury designations as if it gives them any kind of advantage over other teams when really it just fucks us up for fantasy. I think next year that in some of my leagues, I'm going to toy with even questionable players will be allowed on IR. And the one I've said that everyone agrees with is doubtful. If a player is doubtful, they should be allowed on IR because doubtful players almost never play. It's like literally 1 out of 100, and even then, that person is usually like on a limited snap count anyways. But this year especially, and I made a thread about it, there's been multiple times where they've had a player listed as questionable all the way up until almost Sunday, and then they're like, oh yeah, no, he's out. It's like, yeah, we all knew he was fucking out all week, and you guys were just pissing around with this fucking questionable tag. I've seen it multiple times. Most recently, the one that I can remember is when Cooper Kupp was questionable heading into Thursday Night Football, and they knew damn well that they weren't going to play him because he would have had to play 2 times in 5 days, and they were going to clearly hold him out for the next week. So, that kind of shit has been sticking in my craw as of late. But yeah, that's just kind of a tandem. Fuck, I can't even think of words. A rant that I'm on right now. Anyways, let's get into some of these questions. Start in a 10-man flex full PPR. Pick 2 of 3. Chase Brown, Kareem Hunt, or Xavier Worthy. That's a tough one. I'm going to go with 2 running backs there, though. I just feel like Xavier Worthy is an extreme boomer bust play. I like the matchup for Chase Brown. Shout out also to the Badge Bros, who I've been trying to follow a little bit more as of late. That's Pete Overzit, Nez, and John, if I'm remembering their names right. Screen names. But one of the plays that they were talking about that they liked was Chase Brown versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that it is also a decent play, though the Raiders defense is a little bit underrated. They can definitely give it up to a running back like Chase Brown. So I think he has a safer floor than Xavier Worthy, but also about the same ceiling. So I look at him as the safer option. And Kareem Hunt, it's hilarious that in this year of 2024, the Kansas City Chiefs are leaning so heavily on Kareem Hunt, but they are. Yo, good morning. Hey, what's up, Raw Boy? What's going on? Thank you so much for stopping by. Next question. Mark Andrews or Tucker Kraft? They didn't specify what kind of league. Let's just assume this is like a normal 12-man half PPR. That's tough. Jordan Love is going to play. He's going to play through, apparently. I think I still would ride the Mark Andrews wave. I am looking at the matchup against the Broncos. Hopefully not hopefully. I mean, hopefully in terms of like your Mark Andrews play, but like I think Broncos defense has been really good this year and can maybe contain Derrick Henry at least for some of the game and force Lamar to have to pass. And Lamar is a little banged up. He may not be willing to run as much. He might be wanting to throw the ball a little bit more. So maybe we do see a little bit more Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews today. So I think I would actually go with Mark Andrews in that situation. Raw Boy needs a flex. Kareem Hunt, Tyrone Tracy Jr., or David Opportunity in PPR. I mean, oof. Yeah, I get it. That's really tough. All three of those running backs are performing right now. Oh. I think my gut instinct is the scariest option, actually. I look at Tyrone Tracy Jr. It seems like he has fully usurped Devin Singletary for that role as the primary running back for the New York Giants. It's a really tough matchup. The Washington Commanders at defense, I think there's sometimes where I think the fantasy community in general has a hard time adjusting where like a defense looks really shitty for the first couple of weeks, but then, they've put the clamps down on have the Commanders for like the last like 3-4 weeks. They've been one of the top defenses in the NFL. That actually really scares me for the Tracy matchup now that I'm thinking about it. The problem with Kareem Hunt is the Bucks matchup isn't that much better on Monday Night Football. I think I'm just going to go with the talent. I think I'm going with David Opportunity here. He might not have necessarily the ceiling of the other guys when they get the full workload by themselves if they fall in the end zone twice. But Opportunity has been the most consistent. And I think the only thing you can argue is that, like, oh, yeah, he has to share with Jahmyr Gibbs, but they're going to be in Green Bay. That's a really tough matchup, too. Ugh, I am really torn over this one. I think my final answer is Opportunity. I will say the only thing that would tilt me is if you're in a situation where you're like 2-6 and you're down bad and you're facing like the top ranked team, then maybe I'll go with like the ceiling play in my mind, which would be Tracy. And again, you're playing a lower percentage at this point, though. You have to think to yourself, like, I'm looking at it as like it's almost guaranteed my Opportunity is going to get you like 10 to 15 fantasy points and could get a little bit more. To me, the ceiling really is Tracy of like if the Giants were to win that game, I feel like it would be on the back of Malik Neighbors and Tyrone Tracy, and he would have a great game. And they're just gonna grind on Kareem Hunt. I am expecting him to have a decent game, but I don't think he finds the end zone twice. I think, or at least has like limited yardage. If he does get multiple touchdowns, it's gonna be like one of those games where he like has like 15 for 50 and 2 tutties. But I'm actually expecting more like 15 for 50 and a tutty. So I think he has a safe floor. I don't know that he has the ceiling this week. My initial gut was Tracy. I think the safer play is Opportunity, but it does depend a little bit on your team makeup. So I'm going to say Tracy for ceiling, Montgomery for floor. Hey, what's up, Dylan Fink? Morning, need help. Season's on the line. Woof. Okay. No pressure. Full PPR, different leagues. Start one tight end, one flex. Holy shit. Ertz, Komet, Taysom, Sutton, Bucky, Christian Watson. Okay, if my season's on the line, I'm gonna Ooh. I'm going to take the floor play that is Cortland Sutton. Because Bucky Irving has a really tough matchup against the Chiefs, and Christian Watson, who fucking knows what he's going to do. So Cortland Sutton in what should be a positive game script against the Ravens, where you can't really run on them, but you can throw the ball. He's the primary target. He should see enough targets and maybe gets a touchdown. I think Cortland Sutton is locked in for me as like the floor play. And so that means I need a ceiling for my tight end. So Ertz is out. Ertz is definitely just a floor play. I'm kind of torn between Cole Kmet and Taysom Hill. Both of these guys are very boomer busty. I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go purely with the matchup, and I'm gonna go with Taysom Hill against the Carolina Panthers, and I'm gonna hope that he gets a rushing touchdown and like a passing touchdown. Like he has to have a multiple touchdown game and have one of those stupid fucking Taysom Hill weeks where he should not be ever listed as a tight end, but he is, and so he breaks fantasy. And I'm gonna hope for that because I do think Kmet is capable in the Arizona matchup of having a nice game. And I'm not gonna lie, I have some really deep, like I was doing some best ball lineups, and to differentiate myself with my last picks, like my 5 and 6 round, I took Kmet Williams stacks in a couple places. Not a lot, like maybe 10%, but I think I would go with Taysom Hill and Cortland Sutton. Final answer for that. Start one quarterback, Kyler Murray or Baker. I'm going with Kyler Murray purely. Again, Chicago defense is pretty tough, but Kansas City defense is even tougher. And when you don't have your wide receivers, that really scares the hell out of me. I stuck in the flames with Baker last week. I'm not doing it this week in my league. I can tell you that much. I have Kirk Cousins, who I'm pivoting to. I think Kyler Murray is a good pivot. I do think it turns into a little bit more of a shootout with the Bears and Cardinals. So I would go with Kyler Murray there. And then start one running back and one flex. I'm going with Josh Jacobs for sure for the running back. Between Dobbins and Jacobs, I like Jacobs more. Especially, I do know Jordan Love should play, but I think they're going to lean on Jacobs more. And he should be good to go. I'm really torn between Terry McLaurin and Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs is going to have an incredible week. I have a lot of Josh Downs in my best ball stuff. Josh Downs is averaging, I think he's like third amongst wide receivers in fantasy points per game when Joe Flacco's playing right now. I think, I think I would go with, I still want to go with Terry McLaurin because it's hard not to start your studs. And it's the Giants. I'm probably still starting Terry McLaurin myself, but it's going to nag me how good Josh Downs' matchup is. I'm trying to find a way to get him in my lineup. And Boy also said, I thought you were talking about like JSN or LA for a second, and then I realized like, okay, adding to the flex question earlier. Yeah, no, I'm not chasing the JSN start again. I did that last week, and it could definitely hit this week, but over the 3 running backs that you named, I was having such a dilemma with those running backs. I can tell you I would start every single running back individually over JSN. So like if you were like Kareem Hunt or JSN, Kareem Hunt. Tracy or JSN, Tracy. Montgomery or JSN, Montgomery. So I think JSN is processed by elimination. He's the one that's out for me. So again, doubling down on my original answer. If you need a floor play, like you just need the safest play, I think that's David Montgomery. If you need the guy that gives you the biggest ceiling based on matchup, I think that's Tyrone Tracy. All right. Let's get a couple more questions from the network. Pick 2. Start Josh Downs, Devonta Smith, Tyreek Hill, or Brian Thomas Jr. Wow. Okay. So right away, I'm eliminating Brian Thomas Jr., who has been magical and incredible this season. I thought he was going to miss a couple weeks. They were saying he had some kind of rib injury. Now he's tagged as probable, like he's going to play through it, which indicates it could potentially be pain management. I'm not risking it this week. If he makes it through this week, then I'll trust it again next week. But if I have options like on what I'm looking at here between Josh Downs, Devonta Smith, and Tyreek Hill, there's no way I'm throwing Brian Thomas Jr. injured in above them. So he's eliminated right away. I really love Josh Downs this week, but Devonta Smith and Tyreek Hill, I think, are the correct answers there. So that's what I'm going to say. Devonta Smith and Tyreek Hill. Half PPR, Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman. I like this one a lot. I'm going with Keon Coleman. I've actually snuck Keon Coleman into my DFS lineups here and there. If you look at the last 2 weeks, Coleman has exploded in what is essentially the Gabe Davis role. Because now all of a sudden you have Amari Cooper as a primary wide receiver. You have Khalil Shakir dominating out of the slot. You have Dalton Kincaid kind of opening things up in the middle. And then all of a sudden, the one role that's kind of open is that Gabe Davis down the field role as the X receiver on the left side of the field. And that's become Keon Coleman. And Josh Allen definitely willing to push the ball downfield. I think this sets up as a perfect matchup with the Miami matchup. I've been trying to get pieces in general of the game. I have a lot of Josh Allen this week. I have paired him sporadically with either Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman. And I think Keon Coleman might have another big week in him this week. So again, back-to-back big weeks ever since Amari Cooper was traded there, basically. So I think it's had a really positive effect on the kid, and I just like the matchup for him. Xavier Worthy has been so boomer bust that I trust Keon Coleman, and it's not just that I trust Keon Coleman, it's that I trust Josh Allen to push the ball down the field more than Patrick Mahomes right now. So, yeah, I think I'm taking Keon Coleman there. Full PPR redraft league. Should I trade away? Oh, we got a trade question. So, should I trade away JSN and Fergie-licious to receive? Ugh, 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 oh, my God. Oh, my God. Okay. The answer is no. But wait till I read these names. You guys can get a little chuckle with me, all right? I want you to picture yourself. Raw Boy, if you're still here watching, my guy, you're a JSN owner. This is perfect. You have JSN and Jake Ferguson, and someone trots up along to you and says, hey, let me trade you Travis Etienne, TJ Hawkinson, and Quentin Johnston for JSN and Ferguson. What are you telling them? Honestly, I know JSN hasn't been like super great this year, but if it's me, I'm probably telling them to kick rocks. The fuck kind of offer is that? TJ Hawkinson literally like just coming back from the dead. Travis Etienne maybe lost his job to Tank Bigsby, and Quentin fucking Johnston. That's just a slap in the face. So let me tell you, you answer the question in the chat for us, Raw Boy. JSN and Jake Ferguson, Travis Etienne, TJ Hawkinson, Quentin Johnston. What side do you want on that deal? Me personally, I'm sticking with JSN and fucking Hawkinson. JSN and Fergie-licious. He doesn't even need it too, and he specifies the rest of his roster as having like who's he got here? He's got Cade Otton and Dallas Goedert. Bro, just drop Dallas Goedert. You have Cade Otton and Ferguson. Drop Dallas Goedert. Move the fuck on. Like, this is nonsensical. Or at least trade if you could get rid of JSN Goddard, and then he had some other jabronis in here like. His wide receivers are actually really good. Higgins, London, A.J. Brown, and Collins. He's just dealing with injuries. Running backs, James Conner, Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Charbonnet. Boom, there it is. Throw in Charbonnet or Ray Davis as a handcuff. and change that to Dallas Goedert. So JSN, Dallas Goedert, and Ray Davis or Charbonnet for ETN, Hawkinson, and Quentin Johnson. Now you got yourself a deal. There you go. What's up, Albert? My man in the chats. What's going on? All right, here we go. Some recency bias in this question. Chris Olave or Lad McConkey? Look, I'm a super lad. I'm the Lad McConkey guy. I'm winning a bet right now with my guy HoofTube. Shout out to him. We bet on who would be more fantasy relevant this year, JSN or Lad McConkey. And after last week, Lad McConkey put me in the lead. But yeah, I'm still going Chris Olave. I've actually got a ton of Chris Olave in my best ball. I'm pretty overweight on him this week. I think the matchup against the Panthers is absolutely stellar. I actually would have preferred if it was the combination of the Rattler Snake and sexy Jake Haener. But no, we get Derek Carr coming back. But because of the absence of Rashid Shaheed, it doesn't scare me as much. So I think Chris Olave is still going to get peppered with targets. I expect him to have over 100 yards and a tutty in this game. So I'm starting Olave with confidence. Kraft or Laporta. Oof. As far as I know, Jameson Williams not available for this game. I'm going to stick with Sam Laporta. I know Tucker Kraft has been pretty good, but I think Sam Laporta's got a good game in him this week. Josh Jacobs or James Conner this week. That's a really tough one for me. I actually think I would have maybe preferred the Jacobs play if Malik Willis was in, because it feels to me like that's more of a lock for 20 to 25 carries for Josh Jacobs. Jordan Love insisting that he's going to play, but Jordan Love is banged up, so you would think that they don't want him throwing the ball 40, 50 times, and then they're going to lean on the run a little bit. And Detroit's defense has been, I think, playing above board. I actually think they can be had both in the run game and in the pass game. And I think because this is a home matchup for Green Bay as well, I could see them leaning on Josh Jacobs. I do like James Conner a lot. I think the matchup against Chicago is a little bit tougher. So I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs here. Ooh, defensive question. This one already passed. Never mind. Okay, let me see. Yeah, see, this is what I was saying about Brian Thomas Jr. and how the injury shit with fantasy football is so crazy. So when he was originally hurt, they were saying Brian Thomas Jr. is potentially going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. And then next thing you know, it's a chest injury and he's just considered day-to-day and has a chance to play in week 9. So it's like, nobody knows what the fuck is going on with these injuries. This is why I'm saying next year, every alphabet letter can go on injury designation. I don't even give a shit. Questionable. And people are fighting me on it. They're like, oh, not questionable. You're opening Pandora's box with questionable. What Pandora's box? What the fuck could possibly happen? Your guy gets tagged questionable. You put him on IR. You pick somebody up. If that guy actually plays, cool. You still have to drop that person to pull him back off IR. Like, it doesn't change anything except giving fantasy managers a little bit more flexibility to manage around these lion-ass fucking NFL teams. Oh, trade Deontay Johnson for Hunt. Deontay Johnson and Kareem Hunt for Evans. Yeah, 100% I would do that. You have the running backs to support that. If you're using the combination of Kareem Hunt, Tyrone Tracy Jr., and David Montgomery as a flex, then I would definitely upgrade your wide receiver. You're going to have to wait a couple weeks for Evans to come back, but I mean, he's so clearly a wide receiver one Hall of Famer compared to Deontay Johnson, who I like Deontay Johnson a lot, but we've already seen a couple times this year wide receivers changing teams. It's going to take a couple weeks for them to acclimate if you're not Devontae Adams, who played with Aaron Rodgers and even in Nathaniel Hackett's system for 10 years, right? That's like the one exception of like we saw Devontae come into an offensive system he already knows with a core quarterback that he already knows, and that's why right away he started seeing targets. Amari Cooper, it's like he had the touchdown the first game and then not much since. So generally speaking, when you get traded in the middle of the year and you're suddenly having to pick up a new playbook, develop chemistry with a new quarterback, like these things take time. So, and time is the enemy right now because we're in week 9. You ain't got time. I'm playing in 2-week chunks at this point. So time is, you don't have the time to be patient anymore. So I would trade. I feel like by the time Deontay Johnson could be relevant for the Ravens in terms of fantasy football, Mike Evans should be back healthy. And, Kareem Hunt has been tremendous. I don't know if he's going to be able to keep up this volume all year. If he does, then I still think this is like a really even trade. But since you have the running backs to spare, which is, pretty rarefied air in this year of 2024 fantasy football. So kudos and fuck you. But seriously, I would do this trade because you're getting a big upgrade at wide receiver for your eventual playoff push. And you still, like I said, have a lot of depth at running back where this isn't going to hurt you in the long run, I don't think. Blue Jays, what's up? Hey, fellow Canadian, I'm hoping, or guessing, I guess. Morning, boys. Pick 2, DJ Moore, Jaden Reed, Jacoby Myers, or Keon Coleman. Ooh, that's a tough one. Also, Laporta or Taysom with all the injuries in New Orleans. Okay, I'm going pure upside with DJ Moore and Keon Coleman. I just think Jacoby Myers is definitely a floor play. He's like the guy now for Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. I think he's gonna have a decent game. I just think this is a potential blow up spot for DJ Moore against the Cardinals. I'm hoping anyways. And then I think Keon Coleman again. This is very boom or bust though. So the only contingency I'll say is if you really feel like you're in a position where you are, you're the undefeated team taking on the 1-7 team or some shit like that. Like, okay, split the difference and go DJ Moore and Jacoby Myers. But if you are, again, if this time of year, if you're 3-5 or whatever it is, 3-6, and you're facing a top contender and you need big points to get through the week, I'm throwing DJ Moore and Keon Coleman in there. As far as Laporta and Taysom, I do. Oh God, why is it starting to feel like everybody's jumping on the Taysom Hill bandwagon because of the matchup, and this is going to be a week it disappoints, and then next week nobody's going to do it, and he's going to have a monster week. This is the story of fantasy football and the nature of Taysom Hill. I think Sam Laporta is good enough that I still would play him above Taysom Hill. Like, there's a handful of guys of like Kyle Pitts, Jesus Christ, Taysom Hill, Kyle Pitts, Sam Laporta, Trey McBride, kind of level of tight end. I think I'm still playing those guys in potentially positive matchups and game scripts. Like, Kyle Pitts is going to be against Dallas. Green Bay has the divisional matchup against the Detroit Lions. That could end up in a high-flying, high-scoring game. If that becomes the case, I want Laporta in that situation. I think he could have a big game. Yeah, I get it with the Taysom Hill thing. I feel like I'll be more pissed at myself if I try to get cute and bench Laporta for Taysom Hill, and Taysom Hill puts up a wet fart, than if I play Laporta and he has a decent game and then I miss out on the Taysom Hill week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if I get 15 out of Laporta and Taysom Hill ends up with 25 and I lose my week, I'll still eat that and be less pissed than if I try to get cute with Taysom and he just puts up fucking like 3 points, and that cost me my week where I could have just played Laporta and won. Like, I can live with one of those situations, the other one not so much. So I think based on that reasoning, I'm gonna go with Laporta. But again, I think it's a safer floor too. I know it's been really hit or miss with him this year, but I think they're just gonna need him against Green Bay. George C, what's up, my man? Do I start Chase Brown or Tyrone Tracy, half PPR? And then do I risk Jordan Love, or do I start Stafford or Nix instead? Oof. Yeah, that's a tough one. Okay. Let's start with the first question. Chase Brown or Tyrone Tracy? Ooh, yeah, I really love Tyrone Tracy. I hate the matchup. The Washington Commanders just scare the shit out of me. It's not just that the Commanders scare me. It's like, I know he had a decent matchup against the Eagles in spite of everything, but it's like, how many times can just an NFL running back, no matter who you are, have a great game when your quarterback is getting sacked 8 fucking times, right? Like, that seems like an outlier to bet on. So I think in this situation, I'm going to go with Chase Brown in the matchup. I think they'll probably end up leaning on him a little bit against the Vegas Raiders here. T. Higgins is out, so I think that helps too, where he could see some extra work in the receiving game. So I think I'm going to start Chase Brown. It's not by like a huge amount, but I just think based on the matchup and because I'm genuinely scared about the Commanders matchup, I do think I would start Chase Brown by a little bit. And then as far as Jordan Love, Stafford, or Nix, I probably would just stay in the flames with Jordan Love, to be honest. If he's going to play, I'm going to trust that he is good to go. It's a divisional matchup. It's a home matchup. High-flying Detroit Lions offense hopefully pushes them to have to score more than 30. So I think I would stick with Love. If you really don't believe that, though, like between Stafford or Nix as the replacement, I don't have the balls to go with Nix yet. Like, I know that the Ravens have been a pass funnel, is the word used by every fantasy analyst this year. The Ravens defense could just as well shut down a rookie quarterback. Like, there is more risk involved with Bo Nix than Matt Stafford, in my opinion, especially with Cooper. At minimum, you're going to have Cooper Kupp today, and I still think Puka's going to play. So I think Stafford would be the backup if you really are, feeling risk adverse to Jordan Love and you desperately need the floor. You can't lose this matchup. You can't risk Love going out. I get that, but I think Love has the highest ceiling, and if he's going to play, I'm going to trust that he can make it through, and so I'm going to go with him. And then Raul Boy says Taysom is going for 1 rushing, 1 passing, 1 receiving TD and 200 yards. Yeah. Well, that's how it feels like everybody is predicting. This is, okay, shout out to Raul. I know you're joking. I totally get that you're joking. But this is like one of my things of I get mad sometimes with like other fantasy analysts and like the fantasy community in general, because I feel like the way they project stats for football players is asinine. Like, I don't know where they pull this shit out of, but straight up, like, they'll be like, oh, yeah, Taysom Hill, Carolina Panthers, this motherfucker's going for 30 points because he's going to have exactly what you said, like a rushing, a passing, a receiving touchdown. This motherfucker's going to throw the ball to himself, catch it himself for a touchdown, spike that shit, and that's going to be fucking 14-point play. Boom, book it. Like, I swear to God, the way these fucking some of these fantasy analysts like project this shit drives me nuts. I think Taysom is very capable of having a big game. This is also a spot where it's like when everybody's in on it. This is just like my fickle nature, like my pessimistic nature, my I think where I'm always like, I call it Murphy's Law, where it's like I'm always expecting the worst to happen. I'm like, if everybody's in on the Taysom Hill week this week, it's going to be a dud week. I can just feel it in my bones. And I hate being like that. I wish I could be the opposite. I wish I could be the one that like it's like, ooh, I feel the Taysom Hill week. The optimistic, happy-go-lucky, ignorance is bliss, right? But no, I feel like I'm doomed by my knowledge where I'm like, man, I'm telling you, I'm this is, and it's a road matchup too, right? Like the Panthers are at home. Like I know the Panthers are dog shit, but like I said, like divisional matchups get weird. I could totally see this being like a 23-17 game for the Saints. Like they'll still win, but like it won't be the blow up spot that I think people expect. Like I have not, I'll tell you this, in best ball, Kamara going at the first pick overall, I wasn't touching that. There's no fucking way. I don't give a shit about how bad the Panthers have been this year. Over Saquon, over Kyron Williams, who scored a touchdown in literally every game this year. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So this is why I'm like, sometimes I feel like the fantasy community just gets carried away with shit and like doesn't know how to project things. I think it's especially noticeable the next time you guys are watching fantasy analysts at the beginning of the year. Start listening to their projections for wide receivers. If these motherfuckers start saying 1,500 yards, I don't think people understand how much of an outlier a 1,500-yard receiving season is. You are talking about, like, in the entire history of the NFL, of every season that has ever been played in the NFL for wide receivers, maybe like 10% have crossed the 1,500-yard threshold. That's fucking high. And very few wide receivers in the history of the NFL have ever repeated that mark in back-to-back years, let alone like year over year over year. So like, again, when you start listening to fantasy analysts and they start saying like, oh, this wide receiver is going for 1,500 yards this year, alarm bells should start tingling. When they start predicting quarterbacks to just throw for 5,000 yards, do you know how many 5,000-yard seasons there are in the history of the NFL? Do you know that in Tom Brady and Peyton Manning's collective careers, they have only passed for 40 plus passing touchdowns in a year 6 times? 6 out of fucking like 40 years of excellent quarterback play. Like, again, people cannot fathom and just don't seem to understand numbers. It's like the phenomenon of like, if you ask someone to explain a billion, right? Like how big is a billion compared to a million? It's like the human brain cannot even comprehend, for the most part, for a lot of people, like just how astronomically bigger a billion is compared to a million. And I swear to God, people do this shit with fantasy football where they're like, this guy's throwing for 40 touchdowns and 5,000 yards this year. I'm like, that's been done like 5 times in the entire NFL. Like, it's ridiculous. Sorry for the rant. All right. Asher Weinstein, welcome. Tillman or D-Hop? Ooh, we're deep diving. Cedric Tillman or DeAndre Hopkins? Yeah, I'm sticking in the flames with Cedric Tillman. I do like DeAndre Hopkins above really tertiary plays, right? So if I'm in leagues where I was relying on Tutu Atwell, and now these are like my dynasty leagues where it's like I had Tutu Atwell and I was starting him, and now I need someone else to start. Like I'll start DeAndre Hopkins instead. But I think Cedric Tillman with Jameis Winston. I also think I look at the matchup as kind of a little bit of I think this is a secret shootout game. So, the Chargers, you look on the surface, and I think the Browns too. It's actually funny. You look at the surface of both of these teams, the characters of what these teams represent, what these teams want to be is defensive-minded, run-heavy teams, and neither of these teams are that right now. They are both essentially high-flying, high-octane, push the ball down the field, passing offenses, and kind of like solid but not great defenses, right? And part of that is just because, again, they're getting aired out so much that it's happening on both sides of the football. So the Chargers, if you look at the last like 3 weeks, Justin Herbert, his pass attempts have spiked way up. And you look at Jameis Winston and the way that he's going to throw the ball around, his pass attempts are going to be way up too. I'm expecting minimum 60 pass attempts between both quarterbacks. And I think it could be even higher than that. I think we could push 80 pass attempts in this game between both quarterbacks. So I am expecting a lot more of a high flying game. This is also in part because the Chargers running game has started to struggle. You know, J.K. Dobbins hasn't been quite as good of late, but also the Browns run defense is pretty is especially good, but they can be had through the air. You want to talk about a pass funnel defense? That's what the Browns are. And then you look at the Browns offense, Nick Chubb, as much as that's been a fantastic story and, you know, an emotional boon for the team, he's averaging 2 yards a carry. He looks like a guy who is still working his way back from an absolutely devastating, potentially career-ending injury. This is very much like Jamal. I wanted to say Jamal Williams, but I meant Javonte Williams, the kid from Denver there, who, you know, looked slow all of last year, essentially. And we're now just this year seeing him start to kind of pick up that steam. And even still in some games, still kind of looks like he's working his way back. Like Nick Chubb, again, this was a potential career ender. So I'm not expecting him to average anywhere close to 5 yards a carry at any point for the rest of the season. And I also expect them to limit his touches. So I think now that, you know, the curse of Voldemort has been lifted off of this team, Deshaun Watson and Stefanski are going to cook for the rest of this season. So I would definitely, you know, kind of a long-winded answer, but I think I'm going to take the ceiling play of Cedric Tillman here, and I'm going to stay in those flames. I'm going to chase those points because I see the opportunity to repeat. Whereas with DeAndre Hopkins, again, I need to see him start to take on that Rashee Rice role in this offense and start to see a little bit more of the targets go his way. Once I see, you know, I don't need it to be super high, but once I see an average of about 7 to 9 targets a game starting to go Nuke's way, even if he's not necessarily performing right away, I'm going to start sticking him in my lineup for when it does happen. But the last game, I think he only had like 6 targets, maybe. As long as it stays in that 4 to 6 range, I'm going to take ceiling plays over DeAndre Hopkins until I see him really start to acclimate and get involved in that offense, because I do expect better games down the road for DeAndre Hopkins. So make sure you hold on to him. Oof, I'm running Carr, Taysom, Kamara, Olave stack. Yeah, that's risky business. That's either going to really pay off or really piss you off is what it's going to do. Asher also asked Pat's defense or Bears defense. Yeah, I'm going with the Patriots defense. The Titans have been a joke on offense. Whether it's Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, you are almost guaranteed to get some turnover action. Let's actually go look and see if they are stupid enough to start Will Levis, because I actually have Mason Rudolph in a couple deep super flex leagues where I might actually need to start him. So this is good information just for me to know. Okay, yeah. So Mason Rudolph is in line for another start. Will Levis still working his way back, so it seems like they're going to lean on a Mason Rudolph. So I will say that makes it a little less of a good play. But I still would go with Patriots defense. Like I said, the Titans, and also Tony Pollard is supposedly going to play, but he's been questionable and not practicing the entire week with a foot injury. So that kind of scares me too. So he seems like he's going to play as Tony Pollard. But the Patriots, it is a road game, but I'm going to go with the fact that, like I said, Mason Rudolph has been, and just the Titans in general, the Titans quarterbacks have been one of the most turnover-worthy quarterbacks in the NFL, whereas, like, the Bears are going against the Cardinals. Like, okay, maybe they end up crushing the Cardinals, and that kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's like, you can either play the defense playing Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride and James Conner, or you can play the defense playing Mason Rudolph and Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard, and that's it, right? So like I'm gonna go with that option, even if it doesn't work out in terms of the points. Process over results sometimes, right? And Savvy, what's up? Flex One PPR, Josh Jacobs, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr. Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah. Josh Jacobs is your floor play. If you're like a really good team, again, you're 7-1, or what are we? I keep fucking up the records. We're okay, no, yeah, eight is proper. So yeah, if you're like 3-5, you're 2-6, you're facing a really top flight team, and you need the ceiling play. I'll go back to the well with Marvin Harrison Jr. I said earlier in the season, if I start to see, one or two games pop up where he's getting like the targets and going over the century mark, kind of regardless of what's happening with the touchdowns. I just need to see your number one overall generational wide receiver getting an average of 7 to 9 targets and, maybe getting like 5 to 6 receptions a game and over 100 yards. If I start to see that on a little bit more of a consistent basis, I'm going to start to treat him like the wide receiver one that he was drafted as. So if you are in a situation where you're, looking for kind of a huge explosive play, I might go MHJ, but my gut still says Josh Jacobs. I think the Packers are at home. Jordan Love is banged up. And Josh Jacobs coming off like 25 carries last week. And even though he was questionable all week, I can tell you as a former Josh Jacobs fantasy manager that kind of shit doesn't matter to me for him specifically. They'll give him rest days. I remember specifically actually when he was with the Raiders, there was a week where he was questionable the entire week. He was a game time decision. They weren't even 100% sure this guy was going to play. And then he played and he had his best game of the year. It was the game he went over like 200 yards and had like 4 touchdowns. So certain running backs, and they're rarefied, right? Like a Derrick Henry, a Josh Jacobs, those type of big boys, running backs that are going to rely on volume more than anything. Like if they're going to play and they're going to get the carries, then I'll play them. So I actually think my final answer is Josh Jacobs, I think is the safest play there. And I appreciate the answers. No, I appreciate you, Asher, and I appreciate everybody else that came by and dropped their questions today. You know what? We got a little bit more time. There's no early games or nothing. I got nothing going on today. So let's just go back and take a couple more questions. We'll maybe do like 10 more minutes and then we'll get on out of here. Plus, I already did all my drafting. So I'm on a minor win streak right now for NBA drafting on best ball on Underdog, which is really funny. I won. Fuck it. I'm pulling it up because I won't be able to remember this, especially right now off the top of my head. Okay, let's see here. So on Monday, I won. I just did 5 little drafts and I won $50. And then took that money and some of my NFL winnings. I went really hard in the paint on Tuesday, and I actually did 21 drafts, which is a lot for me. And I actually lost money on that, but I still won $37. Rolled that over for the next couple days. And then on Thursday, when I saw a slate I liked, I ended up doing 13 drafts, won $80 there. And then last night, I saw the Dunking for Dark pop up. So I jumped in, did 8 drafts on that one, another $70. So little wins. I've just been rolling them over. But because of that, so my sleep schedule is all kinds of fucked up. But I woke up at like 3 a.m. And I was looking at my phone to see like if I had won the night before, and I saw, okay, cool, I won $70, whatever. Basically won my money back and a little bit extra. But then It's like, fuck, I noticed that the draft rooms were open for Sunday shoot around and buzzer beater, and I was like, oh motherfucker, like you're about to be up for an hour and a half. So that's what I did at 3 in the fucking morning. I drafted all my basketball teams. The reason to do that, by the way, if you're like, why the fuck would you do that? You're a sicko. Why didn't you just wait till the morning? Couple reasons. And this works for football too. If you guys are out there doing underdog drafters, any kind of stuff like that, if you're in these best ball streets with me and you're trying to thread the needle, right? You're not trying to, because a lot of these dudes just dump fucking bank because they've won before, right? So it's easy for them to max out a contest of like, if it's a $3 contest, you do 150 entries, it's $450. I don't have $450 to just throw at this shit right now. So I'm like out here trying to thread the needle. When these contests first open, you are actually the one mostly setting the ADP for all the people that are going to draft after the fact. So there is definitely an advantage in getting in early. Early bird doth get the worm a lot of times. And also just the time of day at 3 in the morning, who's not going to be in those rooms competing is like all the badge rows. Cause like yesterday, for example, shout out to badge rows. Nez was in multiple rooms that I was drafting in. So it's like when I know other people see that and they're like, fuck, I'm not winning this draft. I'm the complete opposite. I see that and I'm like, yeah, I want to, not only do I want to win this tournament now, I want my ticket that was against that guy directly to be the one that won, because I'm ultra competitive that way, where I'm like, I'm always looking for like, I want the most competitive players going against me, but that's not always great for when you're trying to win money. All right, Asher's got a question. Rate the squad. Josh Allen, A+. Running back, Walker, A. Shane, Chase Brown, Tracy, Jordan Mason, Tank Bigsby, Sharp. Solid. That's really solid. I would give that an A. Wide receiver, Lamb, Tillman, D-Hop. Ooh, that is your obvious weakness. That is a I would even give that a C+. And obviously like Lamb is carrying that note for you, because that would be not good. That's your obvious weakness. And then tight end Kelsey and Joku Kincaid, that's another A. So I think A-, very appropriate. Your team overall is obviously very strong. I'm assuming this is a start 2 wide receiver league, or you would have to have more wide receivers. If this is start 3 wide receiver, that's scary. If I was you, I would actively be trying to pair Njoku right now, who's very hot right now. Njoku and one of your running backs to get a big name wide receiver to pair with Lamb. Trying to think of who would be available. Who hasn't been super performing? It's a little bit scary, but DJ Moore has an incredible schedule the rest of the way. And I feel like he's definitely attainable for maybe less than you would have to pay for like other prime wide receivers. I'm just looking at guys I think are attainable. I think you could trade for Drake London to maybe, a little bit more name value, but Amon-Ra St. Brown might be something you could look at. Yeah, there's a lot of like injury. Who's actually a really good trade target too would be Josh Downs. And if you could just trade, go see the Josh Downs owner, see if they need a running back or a tight end, and see if you can just flip straight up like, hey, I'll give you Chase Brown for Josh Downs, or I'll give you Tyrone Tracy for Josh Downs, or I'll give you David Njoku for Josh Downs. Joe Flacco being the quarterback for the rest of the year, I think Downs, again, I said it earlier, and I think it was on Fantasy Footballers that I heard it, but Josh Downs is 3rd right now in fantasy points per game with Joe Flacco. Like if you take out the Anthony Richardson games and just include the Joe Flacco games, he'd be 3rd in fantasy points per game. So Josh Downs is an excellent trade target that I think is also very attainable. Yeah, 12-man PPR. Yeah, that's what I thought. 2 wide receiver. So that's why you don't have to carry as many wide receiver. That is an advantage. When you're in, that's good to know though. When you're in leagues like that, it's important to be like, I don't have to carry 17 wide receivers. It's actually better almost to have as many running backs as you do, because you can play 2 running backs and then 1 in the flex, and that technically gives you an advantage, especially this year where it seems like the floor for running backs is so much higher than wide receivers who have been so volatile and or injured. All right, let's see if we get any more questions here in the network. If you guys got any questions to drop in the comments, feel free. We got maybe 5 minutes left and we'll dip on out of here. Go get some breakfast and gear up for some NFL Sunday football. Oh, God. What is this from last? Oh, that's last week, I think. Okay, here we go. Pick 2. Kareem Hunt, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, and James Conner. Yeah, I'm going with Achane and Josh Jacobs. I just feel like Achane has the highest ceiling, and I just really love Josh Jacobs today. Ooh, what up, Jerry? Jerry, hurting my soul. Gardner Minshew or Bryce Young this week, and must be a super flex league. Holy shit. I think the answer is Bryce Young. I actually do. I just feel like, no. Yeah, it is Bryce, right? Like, I know he lost Deontay Johnson, but just feels like the matchup with the Saints could get fluky. Gardner Minshew just has no ceiling to me. Like, it's just like you're praying Gardner Minshew gets to like 15 fantasy points. I think I would go with Bryce Young. I think I would just, Jalen Coker's looked all right. I think Xavier Leggett can do some things. Jatavian Sanders. Again, it's like Minshew has Brock Bowers. I get it. But he hasn't properly utilized even Brock Bowers, I feel like. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I just feel like the whole matchup with Bryce Young, a little bit of a revenge game because the Saints kicked the shit out of them week 1. I'm torn. I am very torn, but I think I'm going to go with Bryce Young. Final answer. I can tell you I've got Minshew in a couple deep superflex leagues where I'm dealing with injuries or I punted quarterback or whatever. I'm starting Mason Rudolph ahead of him because I feel like Rudolph has more ceiling today. Like, even if he makes mistakes, like, he's still just going to push the ball downfield. So, like, that should tell you where I'm at. All right. You know what? I think we'll just wrap it up here. I think that was a perfectly gross question to end the day. Jerry, I always appreciate you stopping by. Also appreciate everybody else that stopped by. Asher and Savvy, Raw Boy, George C., Albert, Blue Yays, and Dylan Fake. Thank you guys all for stopping in today. And anyone who happens to watch this before NFL Sunday, hope this helps you out. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Always helps with the algorithm bullshit. But until the next time, I'll catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes